What's up, Raider Nation? We've got some big news, literally. The Raiders just made a bold move, signing a massive 6'6", 347-pound defensive lineman. His name? DL Laki Tosi. And trust me, this guy isn't just big, he's different. Now here's the twist. Laki didn't grow up dreaming of the NFL. He was actually playing community rugby in Queensland, Samoa. That's right, rugby. But thanks to the NFL's International Pathway program, he made the switch from rugby scrums to defensive line drills. At just 21 years old, the Raiders didn't bring him in through a special international exemption. Nope, they signed him outright as an undrafted free agent. That says a lot. It means they see something real in this kid. I watched a bit of his highlights, and man, he's explosive. For someone his size, the way he moves is not normal. He's got raw power and surprising agility. Exactly the kind of traits you can't teach. It reminds me of when the Eagles took a chance on Jordan Mailata. Jeff Stoutland, their legendary offensive line coach, once said he saw Mailata, another rugby guy, moving like a tight end at 6 feet 8 inches and 350 pounds. The Eagles knew they had something special and developed him slowly. That might just be the Raiders' plan here with Laki Tosi. Sign him. Train him. Let him sit and learn. And when the time is right, unleash him. Now let's talk about what the Raiders might really be planning with Laki Tosi. He's not going to start right away. In fact, we'll probably only see him in games when we're blowing someone out or getting blown out, but that's okay. He's here to learn, to practice, to grow. And just like the Eagles did with Jordan Mailata, the Raiders could be playing the long game. Mailata sat for 2 or 3 years before turning into one of the top 5 offensive tackles in the league. That kind of transformation takes patience and vision. And the Raiders clearly see something special in Tosi, even without the international exemption that would have made keeping him on the roster easier. Now, the Raiders already have another IP prospect, David Agoa, and he doesn't count against the roster. But Tosi, he does. So why sign him anyway? Because they believe his upside is that strong. We throw the word upside around a lot, but this one feels real. Just look at his size, 6 feet 6 inches, 347 pounds, and the way he moves. He hasn't even run an official 40-yard dash yet, but based on the tape, you can tell. This guy is explosive. He probably ranks in the top 5% athletically for his position. Imagine someone that big rushing off the edge, bulldozing a tackle. It's not something you see every day. Yes, he's raw. Yes, he has a lot to learn. But if he puts it together, watch out. But hey, speaking of exciting news, let's switch gears real quick. The Raiders just posted some photos that had fans buzzing. Colton Miller, our cornerstone left tackle, showed up to voluntary workouts. Why is that a big deal? Well, just a few weeks ago, there were reports he might hold out unless he got a new contract. That news came straight from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, who got it from Miller's camp. The message was clear: pay me or I might not show up. But here's the twist. He did show up. He's practicing. He's working. That tells us something important. Colton's bought in. New coaching, new system, and he's still showing up early. That's leadership. That's a veteran who wants to win. The 2 pictures the team shared from practice started going viral. Fans were pumped. And honestly, so was I. Because with Miller anchoring the line and guys like Laki Tosi developing in the wings, it feels like the Raiders are building something big and maybe even special. He's not going to start right away. He'll play in games where the Raiders are either blowing someone out or getting blown out. He'll practice, learn the NFL game, master technique, and hopefully develop just like Jordan Mailata did. Mailata went from being a raw international player to one of the top 5 tackles in the league. The Raiders clearly see something in this new prospect, something worth investing in. Yes, he's raw. And no, he won't count as an international exemption like David Agoa does. Agoa doesn't take up a roster spot because he's part of the International Player Pathway program. But this guy, if the Raiders bring him in, he will take up a spot. That means they believe in his upside. And sure, everyone talks about upside, but this is different. Take DeAndre Thompson, for example. The wide receiver the Raiders signed out of Tennessee, he's 6 feet 5 inches, runs a 4.3 40-yard dash. That's elite. That's not the same as a 5'11 guy running a 4.5. Now imagine a defensive lineman who's 6'6, 347 pounds, and likely in the top 5% for athleticism at his position. That's insane. He's explosive, he's quick, and he's intriguing. Will he dominate right away? Probably not. But seeing a man that size bull rush an NFL tackle? That'll be fun to watch. He's a long-term project, but we've seen raw guys develop before and become stars. And speaking of development, let's talk about Colton Miller. A few days ago, the Raiders posted photos of Miller working out with the team. Why is that a big deal? Because not long ago, his camp leaked that he might hold out for a new contract. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN even reported that Miller wouldn't show up unless he got paid. But he is showing up. He's putting in work. Voluntary workouts aren't mandatory, yet Miller is there. That tells me he's committed. He wants to win. He's learning the new system. And most importantly, he's still the anchor of this offensive line. Section 3, right tackle competition and confidence in the draft. The left tackle is the cornerstone of any offensive line. He protects the quarterback's blind side. That's why having Colton Miller back is huge, especially since the right tackle spot is still up in the air. Yes, DJ Glaze has some upside, but Charles Grant is in the mix too. Coach Pierce made it clear, Grant will be developed as a tackle, not a guard. And when I watch their college tape, I think Grant has more upside than Glaze. That doesn't mean he'll be the better pro, but physically Grant has more to offer. Of course, he's not a sure thing. He's going to struggle early, but that's part of the process. If you give a guy like Charles Grant to someone like Jeff Stoutland, he's turning him into a star. The Raiders' O-line coach, who's Pete Carroll's son, by the way, needs to find a way to do the same. Back to Miller for a second. There were rumors that he'd already signed a new contract. I don't think that's true. If he had, it'd be public by now. My guess is the Raiders told him they'll figure it out later. Maybe they're waiting to restructure some deals. Or maybe Mark Davis has to sell a piece of the team first. Either way, I'm not worried. This offensive line looks solid, and the offense overall is in a good place. Some people thought I was too harsh on Jack Beck, the wide receiver out of TCU. I'm not out on him at all. I just liked a few other receivers more, like Kyle Williams, who went right after Beck, or Luther Burden, who was picked at 39 just after the Raiders traded out of pick 38. Just because I liked someone else doesn't mean the Raiders made a bad pick. I might be wrong. Bottom line, from rounds 1 to 4, I think the Raiders nailed this draft. Every pick made sense, and I'm really excited about how this team is being built. We know 5th to 7th round picks are always a coin flip. So beyond the top 4 rounds, you're mostly betting on upside. But overall, I'm genuinely excited about what the Raiders are building. Now here's something interesting. The Raiders just signed wide receiver Colin Johnson, a former Texas Longhorn. At first, this move didn't make much sense. The WR room is already packed. Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, Jack Beck, and Dante Thornton, just to name a few. So why add another? Well, Johnson brings something rare, height. He's 6 feet 6 inches, 222 pounds, massive for a receiver. Suddenly, it clicked. Maybe this is about helping develop Dante Thornton Jr., who's also a tall, raw talent. Johnson's experience and build could help mentor Thornton in ways a traditional wide receiver can't. Thornton isn't going to light up the league as a rookie. He's a long-term project. But if he develops like they hope, he and Beck could be the core of the WR group in a couple of years, especially as vets like Myers and Tucker move on or get traded. As for Johnson himself, his stats aren't flashy. Just 31 catches and 394 yards over 4 NFL seasons. But he's been on 3 teams and has real NFL experience. He's not expected to be a star. His value may lie more in what he does off the stat sheet. Now let's shift to the front office. The Raiders made a major move. They hired Brian Stark as assistant GM. Stark spent 13 seasons with the Denver Broncos and was their director of college scouting from 2016 to 2024. That's a huge amount of experience. Word around the league is that GM Tom Telesco is building a super team of evaluators and scouts, and Stark is a big piece of that. Also worth noting, May 1st is when most scouting contracts officially end, so this is the Raiders' chance to reset their talent evaluation staff heading into the next draft cycle. All in all, these moves show serious long-term planning. The Raiders aren't just trying to win this year, they're trying to build something sustainable. Now let's talk front office. The Raiders are making some serious moves behind the scenes. You might have heard Champ Kelly is out, and the Raiders are hiring Brian Stark as the new assistant general manager. That's a big deal. Stark comes from the Denver Broncos, where he spent 13 seasons, including 8 as the director of college scouting. This guy has real experience. And here's where it gets even more interesting. John Spytek, the Raiders' current GM, was known in Tampa Bay as the guy who built the Bucs' draft board, even though he wasn't technically the head of scouting. Reports have said Spytek had a huge role in building that team. Now, it looks like he's applying that same model in Vegas. Stark might not just be an assistant GM in name, he could become the key voice in building the Raiders' draft board going forward. That's a powerful position, especially for someone with a deep scouting background like Stark. But that's not all. The Raiders also added Jonathan Stigle as the new assistant director of college scouting. He's entering his 27th year in the NFL and spent the last 11 seasons with the New York Jets. Most recently, he served as a national scout in 2024, and here's the buzz. This guy is super respected in the league. I've seen multiple big scouting accounts talk about how much this guy grinds. He's one of those people who lives for the job. Let's be real. Scouting isn't glamorous. It sounds cool, traveling, watching games, and being part of a team, but it's tough. You're always on the road, always evaluating players day in and day out. I've spoken to scouts who say it's one of the most exhausting jobs in the league. Stigle has done this for decades. He knows what it takes. And the fact that the Raiders brought him in shows that they're serious about building a scouting department that can compete with the best. All signs are pointing to the Raiders quietly assembling a super team behind the scenes, starting with Brian Stark and Jonathan Stigle. You know, a lot of fans don't really pay attention to front office moves, but they matter. Take Adam Peters, for example. He was the assistant general manager under John Lynch with the 49ers. Even though he wasn't the face of the team, people around the league said he was one of the smartest minds in football. And guess what? When it was time for him to take the next step, he got to pick where he wanted to go. He chose the Washington Commanders. In just 2 years, Peters helped transform that team. He got them a franchise quarterback. He traded for a top-tier left tackle. Then, in this year's draft, he grabbed another left tackle who looks like a future star. He's helped turn the Commanders into a strong team, at least on paper. And that's why these behind-the-scenes hires matter. Guys like Peters don't always get the spotlight, but they're key to building a winning team. The Raiders are hoping for that same kind of success with John Spytek. His first draft already looks solid. The players they picked, there's real upside there, but it's going to take time. Young players like Charles Grant or Jack B. or Thornton, they might become all-pros one day, but not right away. Coaching and development will be everything. Still, I'm excited. Spytek seems like he knows what he's doing. I didn't feel that way with Dave Ziegler. From the start, his decisions didn't make sense. Year 1 had some questionable calls. Year 2? Even worse. It became clear fast. He wasn't the right guy. Thankfully, the Raiders moved on quickly. Now, with Spytek calling the shots, things feel different. I mean, they took Kala Kanye, a guy some doubted because of his size. But if you watch the tape, he looked just as good, if not better, than Jalen Carter. That kind of bold move says a lot. This draft had a clear vision, and I trust the direction we're heading. Anyway, that's it for now. As you can probably tell, the setup behind me looks a little different. I just moved, and I'm still getting everything settled. It's been a hectic few days, but I've got more content coming. Tomorrow, I'll be dropping a film breakdown on Darian Porter. The guy has crazy potential, and I'm excited to dive into his tape. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.